CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.
Welcome. I am not doing the official welcome. Professor Radebe will be doing that. But I have the profound honor of just leading us through this afternoon or this morning into afternoon's session. My name is Victoria J. Collis Buthelezi. I'm the director of the Johannesburg Institute for Advanced Study, just up the road. And we are so thrilled, I am so thrilled to be able to join CAPSI for this phenomenal occasion of African women in philanthropy, Adɔyɛ. And we have, of course, Dr. Barbara Masekela, who's going to be giving the keynote, just to take us through, of course, if everyone could keep their phones off or on silent. If, as you come in or you make your way to the front, we will have a question and answer session. The flow will be that Professor Radebe will welcome and introduce. We will then have our keynote by Dr. Masekela. We will then move into a conversation between Dr. Masekela and Ms. Sibongile Mkabela. We'll then go into fireside chat and have Q&A. This is a profound opportunity to think about women in terms of liberation, leadership, and activism. So thank you so much for this. And without further ado, Professor Maurice Radebe.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, that sounds better. It's a good morning today. Good morning and welcome to all our guests. And I'm very pleased that we've got a very important guest. And I will acknowledge them right now. Let's acknowledge Mama Wetu. We see Mama nama twins, she's South Africa, na Mozambique. Asimshayeli izandla Mama Crusher. It's a pleasure and honor to have you. The last time we were in Zim with you, I was really pleased to see you. And so thank you very much for being with us here. Let me continue with my acknowledgements and as I go on. Well, 2 years ago, CAPSI launched a Women in Africa, African Philanthropy Initiative known as Adɔyɛ. Can we all say Adɔyɛ? Adɔyɛ. Yeah, it means women power and love in action. And this is very important. The aim of this initiative is to recognize and understand and celebrate the significant role that women have played and continue to play in all areas of philanthropy in Africa. The emphasis in Africa. Yeah? I remember we are going to another conference very soon in Egypt. We want to define philanthropy in terms of the African philosophy of Ubuntu. Today we pay tribute to two women who have shown extraordinary leadership, selflessness in service to this country and its people. Let's acknowledge Dr. Barbara Masekela. I have just learned that tomorrow is her birthday, so I'm going to lead in singing for her. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear girl. Happy birthday to you. Hip, hip. Hooray. 1 10. Thank you very much. Can you also acknowledge Mamusbongile Mkabela? I know her for a long, long time. Let's give a round of applause. Agahambia to hamba no mieno ake husband Braish Mkabela. Let's give Braish a round of applause. It's very, very. These two, I've got long histories with them. We were they helped us grow up in TEFLOP many, many years ago. So we're really thankful for the work that you've done. Let me speak about our keynote speaker. Dr. Barbara Masekela is a long-serving ANC activist, cultural worker, diplomat. During 27 years in exile, she served ANC in Zambia, Ghana, Britain, and the United States of America. In 1990, after the unbanning of the ANC, Masekela moved to the ANC fundraising department and later became Nelson Mandela's chief of staff until 1995. She served as a member of the ANC National Executive Committee from 1991 to 1994. In 1995, she became South Africa's official ambassador to the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, and served as the Democratic South Africa's first ambassador to France from 1995 to 1998. This was a significant achievement. Masekela was appointed an ambassador to the United States from 2003 to 2007. She wears a lot of hats. One of them is of a distinguished poet. I'm told there's a poet that is going to recite. Is that correct? Yeah, at some point here, MC, you will handle that. So let's again acknowledge Dr. Masekela. And then let's also acknowledge Usisi Sibongile Mkabela is a development practitioner, social worker, activist. She was among the 11 student leaders arrested in connection with 1976 student uprising. She was there when the bullets were flying. She was there, she was part of that group of young stars that dared the South African government and its mighty and defeated it in 1976. She's currently, she's a community builder. She's passionate to build community, and now she's an executive director of Balo World Empowerment Foundation. But her history is long. She's a former chief executive of Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, as well as the initiator of Nelson Mandela's Children's Hospital Trust. Bongi is a recipient of the National Order of Luthuli Silver for her excellent contribution to the well-being of children, young people, and her gallant fight against injustice. Let's give her a round of applause. She's also an author of her book, Open Earth and Black Roses, captures her personal story of the 1976 uprising. We are lucky also that she's been working very closely with us here at the university, at the WBS, in CAPSI in particular. She's lectured a module on working with communities and was instrumental in the formation of Adɔyɛ. This is very, very, we're very thankful for that contribution. And at this point, I also just want to acknowledge Begi Moyo, Professor Begi Moyo, who is the director of the center, who's really the engine behind this all. Begi, just wave your hand so that people may know you. Let's give him a round of applause. His work is just amazing, Begi. Please come up front. There's lots of seats right in front here. You're welcome to come up front. There's a lot of people coming now. Let me also acknowledge Jacob. Where's Jacob? Is also the leader of CAPSI. There you are. These are the leaders of CAPSI. Let's give them a round of applause. At the back there, I've got my academic director, Logan. Please also just wave your hand. He's the academic director of West Business School. These are the people who are driving us. And Begi has got an entire team, including Tandy, that are doing this amazing work. Let me now acknowledge people who are going to play a role here. Ms. Gukukaba. She is the CEO of Save the Children South Africa. Please just wave. There you are, there you are. And then Ms. Theo Sowa, Independent Advisor and Co-Chair, Equality Fund, Africa's Women's Development Fund. She'll be moderating. So there, wow. It's very good that we have all the people that are here and that have organized this. They will be joining us on the fireside chat here, and after Dr. Masekela has given her keynote address. I just want to indicate how this whole event happened, and because this is very important. We've got our student called Sandy Le. Where is she? Is she here? Oh, there you are. Oh, hey, Sandy. Initially, Sandy Le is a student in the CAPSI class, and she basically said, you know, why don't you invite Dr. Masekela to come and teach in the class, which is a small class. And then I think Beggy and the team realized this is big, man. You can't just get here for a small class of students. So why don't we make this a public lecture? And Sandy worked together with the team, and they've done this program. And we like to recognize that initiative of our students. That shows that they own the program, they own the process. And so let's give Sandy a round of applause. Now I've done all my protocol. All protocol is observed now. And so I now want to welcome, have a audiovisual team. Have you marked her? Have you given her all the stuff that she needs so that she can be able to speak? Where's Jason? So let's welcome Dr. Barbara Masekela. Can you use mine? No, you can come this way. And then, is this working? Okay. There you are.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here this morning, and I'm greatly honored to speak with you. I hope you'll bear with me. I tend to, like most old people, I tend to be a little nostalgic for the past. And no doubt I will be referring a lot to my childhood and upbringing, because I think that is what has shaped me, and I am often disturbed to see people living in the now only and not acknowledging that they are here because others before them made it possible for them to survive. I also have to say that it's a particular pleasure for me, but it also makes me nervous to speak in the presence of my sister and my comrade, Graça Machel, who we know is a great daughter of Africa and has served Africa all her life. And I welcome everybody here. I often say that when I go to some of these meetings that too much time is taken acknowledging people. So I will not, I'm glad that Professor Hadebe has already done that and that I don't have to deal. But anyway, welcome to everybody. I think this is a very important conversation because it's a conversation about the impulse for active care and the betterment of fellow human beings. My views on philanthropy have been shaped by what I learned at school and in my life at home and abroad. Regrettably, a major part of that learning has been shaped by a colonial bias, which shone a blinding light on the generosity of the wealthy. In my school history books, philanthropists were always from another country, which was called the mother country. We called England our mother country in those days. And later in high school, I went to Inanda Girls Seminary, which was run by white female missionaries from the USA. Philanthropists were always white, and they were stern, and they supposedly possessed an unfettered altruism which matched their immeasurably deep pockets. They defined the varied problems arising out of poverty, and then, through their giving, promulgated the type of redress to change the plight of the benighted victims. But it was also at Inanda that I heard of Booker T. Washington, of Sojourner Truth, of the legendary Ain't I a Woman speech, and of Madam C. J. Walker, the great African-American woman cosmetics tycoon. These are just a few of the Black philanthropists that I learned about. But there are many, many more, of course. And for the first time, coming from South Africa, I realized that it was possible for a Black person also to be a philanthropist. Typically, in the colonies, it was the white Christian missionaries who played a significant role in evangelical work to spread the word. But they also established an infrastructure for hospitals, schools, churches, and in some cases, such as Botshabelo in Middelburg, they established whole towns that even had the power to collect taxes for the colonial authorities. They were the subjective mediators between the settlers and the indigenous population, and they occupied the lands that had formerly belonged to their parishioners before they were conquered. There is no doubt of the immense contribution they have made to education and culture in many former colonies. Indeed, it can be argued that most of the Pan-Africanists from this continent and its diaspora were educated in missionary schools, and some of our greatest artists, like Gerard Sekoto and Ernest Mangoba, developed their talent in the art departments of missionary schools in the deep rural areas of South Africa. The indigenous people were now a conquered people under the domination of a minority culture that undermined and condemned their own culture as savage and heathen. Yet, it was the refusal to comply with all the precepts of colonialism and the determination to create a democratic, egalitarian society that led them to develop a culture of resistance that began on the very first day of the arrival of settlers in Southern Africa. In the book Native Life in South Africa, the author Sol Plaatje paints a moving picture of the landless, dislocated, and dispossessed population, scattered and homeless on the roadsides of hostile farms from which they had been evicted. This is the context of Ubuntu, our Ubuntu, that caring that leads to giving and alleviating suffering. Before that, before the era of Sol Plaatje, of course, there had been already for more than 100 years colonialism, and that colonialism had caused an upheaval for the people of Southern Africa, so that what we look at when we see history, we see that instead of getting better, the situation got worse. Writing on the challenging circumstances of our times, the national poet laureate Kiurapetse Kgositsile cautions the reader, saying, "The present is a dangerous time to live." That is to say, for women in philanthropy, it is an imperative to make the present less dangerous for women, for children, for the aged, and for men in every sphere of existence. Here at home and in the wide world, where inequality, poverty, unemployment, and war is a wrecking ball set loose to destroy, to mock the achievement of freedom that was the hallmark of the African continent in the 20th century. Because I see myself as a product of the independence movement, not only in South Africa, but in the whole of Africa. We cheered for Jomo Kenyatta. We cheered for Kwame Nkrumah. Yes. We were under apartheid, but their success in leading their nations to self-determination gave us the hope that we needed to fight apartheid. In South Africa, we pride ourselves in the philosophy of Ubuntu, which we claim, like South Africans, of course, to be unique to ourselves. But it's not true. Ubuntu is the DNA of African culture. And we sometimes forget that it was the Ubuntu of the international community which declared apartheid a crime against all humanity, which together with our own multifaceted resistance won us freedom. It was men, women, and children all over the world who said no to apartheid, just as it is now incumbent on all of us to remember troubled areas of the world. We must remember Gaza. We must remember Sudan. We must remember Yemen. We must remember Haiti. And we must remember that we could be there too. Philanthropy played a significant role in our struggles for freedom. Families could feed themselves, children could go to school, medicines were made available, as were education and legal fees through anti-apartheid networks throughout the world. For instance, the Defense and Aid Fund, founded by Canon Collins in London, became renowned for its fundraising towards the elimination of apartheid, assisting in the support of families of political prisoners, paying for legal defense, for the legal defense of political activists, and carrying out wide-ranging campaigns with the liberation movements to weaken the apartheid regime. The disinvestment campaign against South Africa became a powerful weapon against oppression, while at the same time it eroded the apartheid economy and ushered in a new era led by a credible, compassionate, and caring leader, Nelson Mandela, who himself became one of the most inspiring philanthropists of the 20th century. He was not doing politics. He was responding to his love and concern for the underprivileged, because throughout his life, it was not that he wanted to become president and that he had carved out a position for himself, but he did it because of the people of South Africa. And I can tell you, having worked with him, that he was a very annoying man. Because in the midst of critical political issues, he would insist on including in his program all those people that had helped him during his Scarlet Pimpernel days. He would want to go and have lunch with so-and-so. He would say, you know, I went to such and such a place during that time, you know, and those people were so good to me. I must go there. It's very, very, very important, you know. And we had to deal with that, but I think that it was a characteristic of his life always, that although he was involved in high politics, he was always caring and remembered who he was and the condition of the people that he had lived with in his early, more unfortunate days. And I'm not saying this because Graça is here. His activism activism in philanthropy has resulted in many efforts by others to set up their own foundations, which unfortunately all of them cannot always show their existence is sustainable. It would be a useful exercise to have a public directory of all these foundations and an assessment of their actual contribution to philanthropy. I want to move on to the issue of women. One of the things that worries me most about South Africa is that we do not have a women's caucus. The only thing we can cling to, which was a great historical feat, is the 1956 March to Pretoria. We know that all over our country, women are playing an active role. Old women too, in fact, very old women, are playing an important role in keeping our society going. And we know that at the height of the HIV pandemic, it was women, it was grandmothers, not in Bryanston or Houghton or those places, but grandmothers who lived in huts, who were not very wealthy people, who were not, in fact, you don't even use that word next to them because they had nothing, but in their old age, they had to look after small children whose parents had died from HIV/AIDS. Somehow, the burden of nourishment, of nourishing society, has always been that of women. And throughout history, we have seen women playing that role. I grew up in a small town called Witbank. And in Witbank, by the way, Professor, I'm an author. I wrote a book called Poli Poli. Yeah. I grew up in Witbank, and in Witbank, we lived with our grandmothers because most of the men of our families were not there. They were in Johannesburg, on the reef, working in the mines or working in other positions in business and so forth, as messengers, as tea makers, etc., etc. Because, of course, they could not get jobs in the small mining town, which just kind of swallowed up all the men that they could get from surrounding countries in Southern Africa. These old ladies, many of them sold, not many of them, but a reasonable number of them sold liquor. They brewed liquor and sold liquor like my grandmother. And they did this because they preferred to be independent. They did not want to do laundry for white people. They did not want to work in the homes of white people. So they decided that they would do this. And they were some of the first business people in South Africa. And they made great contribution to the society. I remember one time when my grandmother was so angry because she had gone to church and the priest had made some allusion to the morality of the women who sold beer. And she boycotted the church for about 3 months until she got lonely and went back to the church. So I think that these women were our pioneers. They are our pioneers. And I think that in South Africa, it is absolutely necessary for us as women to come together and form a caucus that will be very loud regarding the condition of women in South Africa. it can't be that political parties are the only channel for voicing, our condition and our need for redress. But it is very important, and I think that personally I would say that one of the greatest mistakes that we made is that we did not focus on the education of citizenship, caring for one another, working in situations where we can uplift. People laugh when I tell them about my mother, who was a social worker. One of the words that she liked to use was the word progressive. If she said, "Oh, Radebe is a progressive man," that was the highest praise that she could give about everybody. And as a child, my mother was a social worker. I grew up knowing certain psychological theories, like that people had complexes. She would always say about her white bosses at work, "Oh, he's got a complex because I'm better educated than he is," We knew, for instance, that children, adolescents, growing children needed an outlet. And even in those days of apartheid, there was an attempt by social workers like my mother and other women who took up the slack that the state did not ignore. I do not remember as a child that a month passed without me sharing a bed with some strange child I didn't know, because my mother always brought children from work, because there was no halfway house where they could be put until they were placed in an institution, so she would just bring them home. And I bet you today the situation is still the same, and it should not be like that in a democratic society. There should be safe spaces for children, for women, everywhere, not only in the urban areas, but all over the country. So what I'm saying is that philanthropy is really inbuilt in a society. And African women are philanthropists, mostly. They are philanthropists because they are teaching and learning and giving at all times. I always write these speeches, then I get excited and forget. I did want to mention that before the 1994 elections, there was an attempt by Dr. Freni Jinwala, who is no longer with us, to form a women's coalition which would embrace women from all parties. I think we should investigate why it did not succeed. And I think that we should try to resuscitate that coalition of women so that we can be in a position to share with other women from our continent and learn from their experiences. We are living in an unpredictable, seemingly regressive era when the conventions of interstate relations are unraveling. our sovereignty is mocked brashly. And it is like existing in a science fiction movie where all the rules are dictated by the most violent and the most powerful, and we are at the mercy of a self-appointed authority. We cannot bow down. Now more than ever, it is essential to rely on those beliefs and practices that made our survival possible. And we must keep the story of our icons alive. There is no country in the world that does not have its heroes and its icons. I will not go into that because I cannot believe what comes out of the mouths of people who have never done a single thing for anybody all their lives. But they know enough today to tell us that so-and-so is nothing and so-and-so has sold out. We cannot afford to let anybody allow us to destroy our icons, all of them. We must act in our own interests. And here I want to refer to the call that has been made to participate in a national dialogue, which will provide an opportunity for everybody to point out what is wrong, not only to point out what is wrong, but also to make a contribution to the kind of South Africa that we want to live in. It is easy to make blanket criticisms and do nothing. The question is, who are we? What do we have in common? What binds us together? The answer to that lies in organized activities designed to stimulate our imagination so that we can acquire an aesthetic sensibility to see the world around us in a fresh and stimulating fashion. The best example of that in our society is perhaps soccer and rugby, which has the ability to capture our attention and give us a strong national identity. It is a different matter with the performing arts, where it is the celebrity sometimes that seems to count above the content. It is understandable that when people have seminars and so on about social cohesion, they tend to want to focus on the very difficult subjects of the economy, subjects often that the common person cannot participate in, but which are the preserve of the educated. One of the greatest challenges that faces us in South Africa is that we have retained the apartheid geography. Spatially, we can sit here and talk and exchange, but there are thousands and millions of our compatriots who do not have the luxury to have a political discussion or a sociology discussion. And they're quite capable, by the way, of having that discussion because they live life daily. They are the salt of the South African earth. I want to, again, Sis Grasa, this was in my speech before I knew you were coming. But I hope we take it very seriously, because I think, to my knowledge, she is probably one of the few people, if not the only person I have heard address this matter. And it is the matter of our national psyche. As a collective, as a people. It has been suggested, for instance, by Graça Machel, that the historical trauma of our past history is an unresolved factor of our present moment of violence and uncertainty. We still have unfinished business. Many years ago, at the height of discussions and workshops about the reconstruction and development program, I suggested to a colleague that perhaps we were focusing too exclusively on the material changes and thinking exclusively only of providing material things to our people. That we need clinics, houses, schools, hospitals, we need all of those things. But we need more than that. As somebody at some point called it the soul of the RDP. The necessity to come to grips with our position and the traumas that our society has experienced. They don't go away. They remain with us. And this is, if you go to, I was invited to a seminar, I won't say where, it was not Joburg, at a university. And there were many very, very good papers given there. But people just would not talk about those matters that pertain to the soul of our people. I mentioned that my mother was a social worker. And when I am asked to speak, I say, I wonder what happens to the millions of children who go to school every day. What happens to them when they come out of school? There was a big controversy and tragedy in a place called Enyobeni in the Eastern Cape, where matriculants who'd finished their exams died in a fire in a bar. And the focus was on the bar, the taverner, that he should be prosecuted, etc. But my question was, where should those children have gone? They've written their exams, they finished cooking, they're at home, it's in the evening, it's a balmy evening, the weather's what should they do? Because there is nothing in those areas, and it's not only in the Eastern Cape, it's all over South Africa. So, as a cultural worker, I feel very strongly that the problem is with our culture, and that we should begin in earnest to set up everywhere, not only in Soweto or Pimville, where those known places, but everywhere where our people are. We have to set up those places where children can go and something else can be introduced into their minds, which will stimulate them to think of something other than the violence maybe on the TV, if they have TV, but I think they all watch TV, you know. Once, a long time ago, when I was growing up in Alexander Township, there was a place, I believe it's still there, called Ndogozweni Family Welfare Center. It was supported by Wits students. They used to have what they called a rag. And they would, on that particular Saturday, be all over Johannesburg in costumes and so on, collecting money for Ndogozweni Family Center. At Ndogozweni, there was a doctor. There were doctors, many doctors, who subsequently left South Africa because they were persecuted. There were doctors. There was a sports. There was a nursery school. There was in a women's club in the afternoon who came to learn how to cook, to sew, and so on. But they had a vegetable garden. But in that one center, they had everything that pertained to the building, that nourished the soul of the growing children. And that's what we need in our country. In South Africa, we think of culture as something connected to celebrity, you know. But culture is really something that can be introduced into our communities and that can help to bring about the social cohesion that we need so much in South Africa. Growing up in the 40s and the 50s, my generation was witness to the attenuation of the progress experienced by the generation of our parents, who were products of a common national education system, which was then replaced by an ethnic-based and inferior education system for blacks only. Professional blacks were cut to size. And where we once admired nurses, social workers, teachers, and other professionals as models, they were now stripped of the dignity of their learning to become mere ethnic intruders in the urban space. It is true that we cannot return to the past, and that we have to negotiate the present with different methods that fit the situation. But indications are also that contemporary values, which are often borrowed or subtly imposed, are fluid and too readily replaceable. I'm going to end up now. I have a lot more to say, but I think we need to have a discussion. We need to talk to each other and have a conversation. I'd just like to say that 3 years ago at the Johannesburg Institute of Advanced Studies, with the help of the University of Johannesburg, I know I'm not supposed to say the name of another university here. We started what we called the Johannesburg Festival of Women Writers. And it has grown to become one of the most beautiful examples of how there are so many young people in South Africa who want to write, who want to be involved in the society, but they have nowhere to go. And the Johannesburg Festival of Women Writers has also shown another aspect, beautiful aspect of our country, which is that every year, we do it for free, but nobody pays coming to the festival. But every year we raise enough money, and most of the money that we raise is from Black people. And last year we raised close to R1 million for the festival. None of us get paid. We pay the facilitators. We get a small donation from the university as well, and they give us a venue, they give us the space, but we are able. But we're not happy with that. We would like to see many festivals of different things, not necessarily writing only. And universities have that space to give to people. And it is important that these institutions, like universities, are not separate. They become part and parcel of the community and actually engage physically with the community. So, thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
You want to come? Wait.
Oh my goodness.
May I call?
That's hard.
Can we have Mama Gracia? Can we have you come up, Mama Gracia?
I was saying to Thandi that this is a special moment of having different generations on the force. Yeah, Barbara, you have two of you, and in this intergenerational, well done, Sissy. It was really great. Thank you. Well done. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Masekela, Ambassador Masekela, Mama Barbara.
You've been listening to the CAPSI podcast series, Conversations on African Philanthropy.